I think, as Dorothy Parker said, everything has already been said, just not everybody has said it. So I'll try and bring a little bit of a different angle. I think what we've learned in this latest experience with COVID is Kol HaOlam Gesher Tzar, that the world is really a very narrow bridge. And just as the virus can cross oceans and borders and mutate and adapt to different circumstances, we see that anti-Semitism is doing the same thing. But I draw hope and inspiration from the fact that you could finally get a government in Israel that we will be able to cope with these issues as well. I will address one aspect in a minute, but I think we have to remember that we came into this from a period of rising anti-Semitism here in the United States, increased physical and other assaults. The latest ADL poll shows that half of American Jews said they have experienced or know somebody who experienced an anti-Semitic attacks. Our numbers now parallel those in Europe. And this should be of concern because people feel insecure about going to Jewish institutions, that many of them do not wear any outward symbol, a Magen David, let alone a yarmulke or anything else in public. Some don't even put their last names down if they are obviously Jewish names. So we are in a climate now where anti-Semitism has moved from the more public assaults, although we see in the last 10, 15 days, we've had a number of assaults on synagogues and Jewish institutions, that it's moved more to the internet and social media. And we have, the COVID has so eclipsed all the other issues that there's no real serious discussion of anything but that. And of course, it's taken the resources as well. So we've seen the ability of them to blame Jews to create these terrible caricatures here in America. We know from history that blood libels and come about at the times of such tragedies or plagues, and often end up with making Jews the victims. And I think that we are seeing that. And when they target Jews now, they are also targeting Israel, and sometimes targeting Israel in order to target Jews. I think it's become increasingly interchangeable in many respects. We don't know yet the true scope or extent or the ultimate damage that the virus has done. I want to talk about the day after, because what's going on now will continue for weeks, for months, different countries, different lengths. But we have not really focused and talked about what will likely face when this is over. The social dislocation, all of the ramifications for social unrest, for economic distress, for the people who are going to be unemployed. And half of Americans have less than $500 in reserves. That will run out even with the aid programs. So when people are hungry, they resort to other things. When stores are boarding up their windows because they're afraid of looting or demonstrations and protests that may come. When the bill for trillions of dollars in aid comes due, when the lost wages, when stores don't reopen, when schools may not reopen, the impact on many Jewish organizations who may not be able to weather this, aside from the human cost and staff, we have not considered in a really thoughtful long-term way, how are we going to cope with this, and how will our ability to cope with the rising anti-Semitism that is likely to come by our communities, by our institutions. I know they continue to work and they continue to monitor it. Will people come back to Jewish events and Jewish institutions? Maybe they'll come back more because they'll have missed it. Or will they be afraid, or will they now become alienated and find that the internet is more than enough for them to satisfy their needs? And what about the return to campus? We have seen that the BDS movement has not gone to sleep. It's not hibernating. They went to Congress about Israel's blocking aid to Gaza and used that to try and mobilize support to cut aid and to punish Israel. And they're still working it, and they're working it in other media and within student groups to try to promulgate this lie, and as they have all along with other issues when it comes to demeaning or denigrating Israel. So after months of confinement, and with all of these challenges, internal, economic, etc., social, it's a fertile ground for anti-Semitism. It's exactly where it flourishes. And so I think we have to collectively look more long-term at this and to see what it is we can do, how we prepare, how we get materials ready. I think the political division, somebody alluded to it, we're going to face conventions, a convention that will be very polarized. We have Sanders delegates who obviously have an Israel agenda that is contrary to what the Jewish community would like to see. We have other forces there as well. We can't write off the Democratic Party. We're trying to work with it, but I think it will be a real challenge. I think we have to do more to follow the lead of New York State to declare anti-Semitism domestic terrorism, and that the attacks really get severe punishments. Too often we are seeing the revolving door of justice, and we also within the community cannot allow, once again, security to become a stepchild in the budgets. With all of the demands, I understand that this is the easiest thing to cut, that you won't have a guard outside, that you won't install the equipment, that you won't invest in the security requirements, but they will be more important, not less important. And we should think about how we can help aid and abet that. How do we get more money from the federal government, which is giving money in significant amounts, and institutions are getting money, that they include the security aspect as we move forward. You see the prisoners that have been released. We see so many challenges that could emerge in the aftermath of this. And too often it's security that gets sacrificed on the altar of expediency. We've seen the Zoom bombing, we've seen other events and threats, and the media coverage of Jews pretty hostile in many instances, unjustifiably. There were bad incidents, there were bad behavior on part of individuals, but if you look at totality, you see it's not, we are going to see a cutback in educational programs. You saw this year we lost much of the Holocaust programming, which is so important. So I think we have to focus, we have to build coalitions nationally and internationally. We should have more coordination, cooperation between our organizations on security, on the threats, on the challenges, and the opportunities. And I think we build on the IHRA definition, on imposing it at campuses and getting it adopted by governments. It gives us a bottom line to which to measure them. I think we saw real improvements in the months before the crisis began, and hopefully we can pick that up again. But I think that this is going to really require us all to come together as a collective effort and share and support one another and try to make sure that our community gives security the priority that it demands.